Good morning, grade 1. Welcome to your SST lesson for this week. Let's quickly look at what we have to study today. We are in lesson 4 and we will be doing Tell Fact from Fiction and a biography on Neil Armstrong. The pages that we are going to cover are from page 190 till page 193. Now let's quickly look at the objectives that we are going to cover today. To distinguish fact from fiction, to recognize facts in a non-fiction writing, to identify Neil Armstrong as the first person to walk on the moon, to recognize that Neil Armstrong's patriotism led to his accomplishments as an astronaut. Now, tell fact from fiction. What is the difference between a fact and a fiction? Let's see. Stories about real things are non-fiction, and anything that is non-fiction makes it a fact. So a fact is stories about real things. These stories only tell facts. So a fact is something that is true and not made up. Now, stories that are mostly made up are fiction. Some stories that are fiction have facts in them to make them seem real. Now, let's take off an example which is a fiction. Do you remember the story about Goldilocks and the Three Bears? Now, if you recall the story, there was a girl who had golden hair, and then she went to a house of three bears. The daddy bear, the mommy bear, and the baby bear. So can you think of a place where three bears are living in the same manner as they were in the story of Goldilocks? No, they don't. So it means this is not something that is actually happening in the world or that actually happened in the past. So it means it's a fiction story that is made up. Alright? Now, look at these two books. They both show a kind of transportation. Yes? So let's look at this one here. What does the title say of the story? It says, Amazing Aircraft. Look at the pictures and the word in each book. Which book is fiction and which book has only facts? Now, what do you think? Which of these books is a fictional book and which has facts in it? So I'm going to read the text that says here is, the Boeing 747 made its first flight in 1969. It carried nearly 500 passengers at speed of over 500 miles per hour. The 747 can stay in the air for 17 hours and travel more than 8,000 miles. The plane itself is longer than the distance of the Wright brothers' first flight. So this is what it's written here. And if you look at the picture as well, and you find the differences between the picture in this book and this book, which one do you think is a fiction book and which one has facts in it? So now that you have heard what is written here on this book, these are actually facts about Boeing 747. And if you closely look at the picture on this book here, it's a realistic picture. It is a real picture of a real Boeing 747. And this here somewhat looks like a fictional book, like see, Amazing Aircraft. So this might be some fictional story about an aircraft which can do things which normal aircraft does not do. Okay, so whenever you have two books, if you have to differentiate that it is a fiction book or it is a fact book, what you're going to do is you're going to look at the pictures on the cover of the book. Do they look more realistic? If they do, it's more likely that it is a book on fact. If it is not, the second check is to look at the title. It might say story, tale, something if it's fiction, or it might describe something that you can think of is not going to happen in actual world, or it cannot happen in the actual world. And that is when you're going to say, oh yes, this is a fiction book and not a fact book. Alright? Now let's start reading about Neil Armstrong, who he was and what he did. When Armstrong was a boy, he liked airplanes and flying. As a teenager, he earned money for flying lessons. Now, Neil Armstrong was the first person to walk on moon. And you should know that transportation has changed over time. One of the newest forms of transportation is the space shuttle. People use space shuttles to travel into space to perform scientific research. Neil Armstrong was the commander of a space shuttle. So he is an astronaut who went on the moon, and he's the first person who landed on the moon. Okay, so he worked for NASA. Now what is NASA? NASA stands for the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Now aeronautic means the design and building of aircraft such as airplanes and space shuttles. Moving forward, let's see. Armstrong first went into space in 1966. Then in 1969, he became the first person to walk on the moon. So once again, Neil Armstrong was the first person to land and walk on the moon. As he stepped onto the moon, he said, "That's one small step for man and one giant leap for mankind." Now, what could he mean by saying this sentence? Why do you think what was the meaning of him saying this? So he meant that even though all he did was take a step, it was an important event in history because it was the first step a person had taken on the moon. Now you should know that the moon landing was one of the major events of the 20th century. More than 1 billion people watched Armstrong's steps on television. Now, Armstrong performed scientific experiments and took photographs on the moon as well. And see here, Neil Armstrong put an American flag on the moon, showing that Americans were the first people who landed on the moon. Now what I want you to do is, you have to do classwork, which is you have to complete page 38 on your practice books, and then for homework you have to complete page 37 on your practice books. If you have any question regarding classwork or the homework, you can always come to your teacher and get the help. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. Take care of yourself. Stay safe. Bye.